Hey, welcome listeners. Today I have the special privilege and honor of welcoming onto my show Dan Inman. Got a very interesting background. 5 years in the Navy in the spec op world. Went from there to being a stay-at-home dad, changing diapers from firing miniguns to changing diapers to deciding, hey, I think I want to do something in my life beyond that. It goes to school, gets a civil engineering degree, decides, hey, that was a great experience, check the box, but man, I think I want to get into real estate. And so once he got into real estate, he learned that he was going to do it differently than other people, and is not a guy that wants to make a bunch of cold calls, reach out and be that kind of guy, but wanted to create systems like an engineer and processes like a business owner to bring clients to him. And so, Dan, welcome to the show today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. So, man, we got to start with your background. It's such a colorful background. Anybody that's been in the special ops world, man, I just have a whole nother level of respect for. So, I don't know if you can tell them anything about that.
Yeah, let me be perfectly clear. I was never a Navy SEAL, but our squadron was directly detached with them overseas. And so my job was to be the guy that held the fast rope and let them down and then provide what's called CAS, close area support. So we were directly deployed with the Navy SEALs and other spec op world, but it seems like almost a lifetime ago. So I went from there, came home. I got the day that I got out of the Navy, basically my daughter was born. And so, but the joke is that I went from shooting miniguns to changing diapers. And in many ways, the diapers were more dangerous.
I had a daughter with diapers. I know what you come from, man. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us about, how and why you chose real estate. Obviously, you've had quite the interesting path, not sort of a straight line into this field.
Mm. Yeah. I throughout college, so I went to Old Dominion and started down the sciences path. I was always interested in math and science and that type of thing. And once you start down the path, you can do medicine, you could do engineering, you could do law. I think engineering is actually the most popular degree prior to going to law school. And so I was like, well, hey, I have a lot of options here. And maybe year 3 or 4, I kind of make a decision on which direction I'm going to go. Start off in the pre-med world. I had a lot of friends that are doctors. Had a very unique honor to know a local doctor here that was a head of like CHKD, good friend of ours. And he was like, hey, Dan, unless you're just passionate about this. Medicine is a very hard and long path. Your daughter is very young. So unless you're willing to give up a lot of that time, you may want to consider another path. And so I chose the civil engineering world. As much as I love being an entrepreneur, one of the things I found in the building world, there's a quote by a guy named John Ruskin, and I'm going to butcher it to hell here, is, when we build, let us not think that we build for present delight or present use alone. Let us build thinking about forever, that our sons will look upon the wrought substance of what we built and thank us for it. And again, it's much more eloquent than that. But it's the idea of building something. It's not just about you. It's not about that first use. It's about your sons and your sons' sons. And I got really fascinated with the world of building and architecture and urban planning. And to be honest, I really wanted to go to Notre Dame for their urban planning MBA and architecture program. At the time, my wife had a really good job, and I thought it was unfair for me to ask her to basically give up her job for me to go pursue a master's. And so I thought to myself, there are 3 ways to get what I want to do, which is to produce beautiful, life-giving, socially responsible building and architecture and urban planning. Either one, I can get into politics. 2, I can be an architect or an urban planner that gets hired to design those things. Or 3, I can make a shit ton of money and then dictate what gets done. So, because I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, I thought, well, what should I do? And I started listening to different podcasts, and real estate always interested me because I understand like ROIs and P&Ls and earning a profit and that type of thing. And so I just rolled the dice and I said, let's start with real estate. If there's ever a time in my life that I have an opportunity to go and fall flat on my face and fail, it's now, right? I finished up my degree. I can always use my degree 2 or 3 years later. My wife has a good income. And so I had a wonderful sugar mama that let me go and try that out. And so a couple of years later, here I am.
Yeah, nothing like having a sugar mama. I tell you what.
My wife is an amazing woman, and I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate in many ways, but mostly because she supports me no matter what.
Well, I think I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, I've been married, gosh, it'll be 32 years in November, which is hard to believe.
Mm.
I know I was married really young, but yeah, it's because I've got a wife that's just amazing. It's totally supportive. And in a world like this, real estate, a lot of emotion, a lot of ups and downs in the world of the entrepreneur. And that's really what our podcast is about because, to be a successful realtor, you're building a business, right? So you are building something.
Mm, mm,
You might not
yes.
just be building, you're talking about wanting to build these, these lead buildings in green and be really thoughtful, with the environment and the future and integration, but you're building something. And that's really what the entrepreneur does, right? I mean, you're not just
Mhm.
selling something, you're creating.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the world's greatest problem will be solved mostly by entrepreneurs, not
Yeah.
politicians.
Yeah. 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 I think the only word I'd scratch there is mostly. I don't think politicians solve any problems. I think they just create
Yeah.
problems.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I think there's an argument to be said, obviously, but I would like to remain at least somewhat optimistic that there are at least some portion, some percentage of them that genuinely care, genuinely want to make a difference and have good hearts. Um, Maybe not all of them, but there's got to be at least one or two. So I'm going to hold on to that.
Well, hey, I'll go with you there, Dan, because I'm an optimist by nature too. I'd love to believe that we could, you know, depend on there will be people that go into that field that are true leaders and that's and they will come along. We're hoping for, but in
Yeah.
the meantime, the entrepreneurs that we're going to take the bull by the horns, right? We're going to make our own change.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember reading a book called The Personal MBA, and there's this thing called the iron law of the market, where it's like the market doesn't give two shits what you care or think about. It either
Mm.
rewards it or doesn't reward it. Doesn't matter how much effort you put in, doesn't matter how much you care, maybe more today than ever with social media. But in general, if you have a shit product or service, nobody cares.
Right.
And so there's a ruthlessness when it comes to entrepreneurship. There's so many babies, that I've had to kind of sacrifice, metaphorically in my business where I'm like, I wanted it to work. I put the money and energy into it and it didn't. It fell flat. And I'm like, but I care about this. I had a short podcast called the I Love Norfolk show there for a little while that I loved because I would sit there and I would talk for 45 minutes, just like I would around a bonfire with some of the local business owners, just hearing their story and that's everything. And I'm telling you, I loved it, but it just had no ROI. There was zero benefit really that came out of it. I have some relationships, but it was just kind of like, man, when it came to like measuring it and going, all right, can I attribute any business to this?
Yeah.
It was like two pieces. And I was like,
Wow.
man, this for the amount of time and energy I'm putting into this is really disheartening.
Yeah. So again, yeah, the truth of the entrepreneur, the truth of the market at the end of the day, people vote with their dollar bills. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's a
Hmm.
measuring stick, right? And so we know sort of that feedback immediately is something working or not, we're on the right path or not. And an entrepreneur is going to try a lot of things like that, right? Because you're
Mm,
creating something, you're turning, lead into gold in the modern sense, right? As an out.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding value and figuring out how to consistently provide that value and then be compensated for it.
Right. Consistently is a key, not a one hit wonder, not a one off or whatever. If you're
Absolutely.
building a business at scale. So you've done something interesting though, this idea that, the traditional sort of real estate approach, call all your friends and neighbors, cold call, do all this sort of beating your head against the wall to try to build get a few deals and eventually kind of grow that over time. You didn't want to approach this career and this business
Mm.
that way.
Yeah, I think two thoughts. One was I've always joked that I have kind of a foot in the curmudgeonly old man category, and then a foot in the millennial category. So part of me is like, I would my grandfather would roll over in his grave hearing me, cry that my business didn't make it within like 5 or 6 years or whatever, because it took him a decade, right? And
Yeah.
and he didn't have social media and he didn't have access to online courses. It was brunt the force and the work ethic that got him to where he was. And I have access to so much more today than he ever did. And so I'm like, I can't complain, right? There's the old man in me. But the other part is like, I don't know if I cuss on it or not, but it's like, I freaking want this. I want it and I want it now. And so the reason I switched from cold calling, one is I can only call so many. I can only door knock so much. And I think social media in particular, whether this is TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, any Facebook, whatever, you have an ability to multiply or your time or leverage your time in a way that you never have before in history. I don't mind talking about this. Like our YouTube channel, as of this month, has about 24,000 views. right?
Mm.
In 28 days. A mixed, mostly long form, but there's some short form in there. About 900 watch hours. I don't know what the math is off real quick off the top of my head. But if you divide 900 divided by 28, there are more hours in the day that are watched than there are hours in the day. That sounds like a really good leverage of time. And when someone watches 12 minutes of a 17-minute video that says, how do you relocate to Virginia Beach? I'd argue that's a pretty good ROI.
That undoubtedly. I mean, I think about it all the time. We talk about scale, and that's always been one of my, since I first went to business in 1990, it's always been a mission is I don't want to trade time for dollars, right? I don't want to be the guy
Little
that
rest that Ford ad there. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Kiyosaki. I probably believe that philosophy, but I was smart enough to know, I think, at least in that area, that I'm a pretty lazy guy in a sense that,
Mm.
I
We
want
like to say efficient.
efficient is a good word. Yeah. Yeah. Ambitiously lazy, I think, was the term I used
There
to
we go.
use.
Okay.
So it's like, how can I multiply my efforts? How can I add that value, but in scale? And the thing that's always intrigued me, I'm not the social media generation. I'm a little generation probably before that. I'm not the millennials, but I appreciate it. But when you look back at everything, you look at media and its impact across the board, whether it's radio or TV or the movies, and then now obviously the internet, you know,
Mm.
the people that, and I have no interest in fame, but the people that have leveraged that effectively, that you look at their lifestyle and what they're able to do and the influence they have simply because they have this ability to scale and reach
Mm.
so many people in a consistent and effective manner. And it's like, until you
Well, it
break
seems
into
like,
that someone.
yeah, it seems like you're capitalizing on now with the podcast. I think the only thing I would push back on you is that, Paul, I don't know if you come from a faith background, but there's an audience. There's people that are missing out on the message and the love and the capacity and the service and the value that you can give simply because you're not willing to put yourself out there as much as you want to, because you don't want to be famous, because you don't want to be present on social media. And I think there are young entrepreneurs that could benefit. You said you've been in business for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like there's no way you can scale your knowledge and love and service more than you can today with the mediums that maybe you're avoiding.
Well, that's you're speaking to me directly, Dan. And that's one of the things
Sorry, I know
that
that
I,
show is about me.
no,
I
it's about entrepreneur. It's, the agent and what you've done, but really entrepreneurs and entrepreneur, one vehicle might be different than a different vehicle. You're
Mm,
using the real estate vehicle. I've used the finance vehicle, but that's a shift that I've made myself that I'm really, working to how can I leverage that now and be more effective? Because I agree, the more success you have, like you, and that's one of the things I love about entrepreneurship. When you crack the code and fail a few times along the way, which I've got lots of those stories, then
mhm.
you have infinite wisdom. I'm not infinite wisdom, but you have a lot of wisdom that you can share then with other people coming along. And yeah, a vehicle like this is just amazing. And I'm looking, to embrace it now going forward, where I did kind of poo poo on it for a long time, to be quite honest with you. I'm like,
Sure.
social
Well,
media,
I think historically, like you talk to our parents, that was done mostly through books, right?
Mhm.
You would learn lessons, whether it was Huckleberry Finn, or it was something Dr. Seuss, or an autobiography, and you would go, this person lived this way, made this mistake. Maybe I don't need to make that same mistake. Or this person learned this, after 30 years of doing this thing, let's just say wood crafting, or, craftsmanship, or stone smithing. You go, oh, like, this is 30 years of wisdom in a book. And I could read it and I could glean from it. And I go, man, there's so much value here. It's not that I don't think that there is immense value still in reading books. I read myself often, but I think you cannot ignore the shift that is happening in the world, and where attention, like Gary Vee says, like, follow the eyeballs, whether you like it or not, follow the eyeballs. And there's so much time and attention given to social media. Again, YouTube tends to be some long form. You look at like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has 3-hour interviews.
Yeah.
And people would say, nobody has the attention span for that. No, bullshit. Look at the numbers,
Yeah, they do.
right? People will say, well, how do you get thought out not in 3 hours? It's like, okay, well, TikTok does it in 3 seconds, right? And it's the fastest growing medium, whether you like it or not, on the planet. And so, there are arguments pro and against being on certain platforms, but the argument still remains. If you want to make an impact today, and you want that impact to be as big as you possibly can, you cannot ignore media.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a wake up call. It's not necessarily what, like you said, sacrificing the metaphorical babies is like, the world doesn't exist as I want it to exist. The world exists
Mm,
as it exists, right? And I need
mm,
to adjust and shift my thinking, my paradigm to embrace it and be part of it, and therefore I can add value to it. But if I'm resisting it the whole time and fighting it, I'm like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, right? And just not. It doesn't.
sure.
If nobody cares, the world doesn't care,
Mhm.
and that's what I love about all the people that they're victimized by everything. It's like the world really doesn't care at the end of the day.
Sure. And my mom, I'm sure your parents, like, hey, Daniel, sorry, life's not there. It's like,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, it's not. It's not. It is, talk about, maybe equity or like equality. Like the reality is, there is oppression that exists in different categories. Absolutely, it does.
sure.
But there also is this idea that you could still start with wherever you are, right? No matter where you are on the mountain, there's
Right.
always more that you could be doing. I would go kind of like in like I come from a faith background. And one of my favorite philosophers says that God, like a good father, or Jesus, like a good father, both meets you where you're at and always calls you to more.
Mhm.
And I think that you have to take that approach when it comes to a degree, the world is brutal and ruthless and doesn't care how much effort you put in, sort of, kind of. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to go, okay, well, even if this oppression or this inequity exists, you could still make some amazing, amazing moves. There's still incredible platforms and incredible upside that you can accomplish. And the entrepreneurial world, to be honest, is some of the most fair. It's like,
Mm.
dude, you have an amazing product. Please bring it to market. Like,
Right.
it may be something stupid like the Scrub Daddy. It's like the world said, yes, we see value here. I want that. Right.
Even the pet rock in the early set.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but you're right. The entrepreneurial world is fair because it doesn't care about your skin color, your religious beliefs, your the color of your hair. It doesn't care any of that. It just cares about, are you bringing something of value to the world that somebody else wants and they'll pay for it. And
Yeah.
to me, that's very beautiful. It's a great thing. And
Yeah, the only thing I think I would argue there is it does sort of like you wouldn't have Tom's is a really good example of this. Someone said, I see value in you providing an extra set of shoes. You wouldn't have Google saying veteran owned business, Black owned business as a label that you could put onto your Google business if they didn't see a potential. And so some people will go, hey, I want to support that business because of this category. So
Mhm.
there is some benefit there.
Sure.
But I think what you're trying to drive home is that, like, hey, to a degree, in general, I don't know who made this.
Mhm.
My wife saw it. She thought it was beautiful and she bought it. She
Right.
doesn't care whether it's a left-handed or right-handed person, a light-skinned or a dark-skinned person. What she cared was this was a product that I wanted. It met the value, the proposition, paid the dollar and brought it home. And so that is the beauty of the entrepreneur. But the story in general is that it levels the playing field probably better than it ever has.
Yeah, it does, and no, that's a very good point. And the funny thing is, you talk about your faith, and I'm a very faithful person too. And regardless of where that faith sort of lives, entrepreneurship will make you a faithful person, I believe, because
Mm,
as opposed to sort of going in and working your week and getting a paycheck or having some kind of a job with a net. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you sort of know that's going to happen. As an entrepreneur, there were days when I had 40 employees and a very large payroll due in a week and looking in the operating account, wondering where the money's going to come from to make payroll. And,
mm,
and there are other days where it's like, wow, I feel like I'm very blessed. I'm rolling in it, so it's a lot of, there's a lot of, you may not know where your next customer is going to come from. You may not know where your next opportunity is going to come from, but you still move forward on faith in something that, hey, you can be successful. And and so that's one thing I think that unites a lot of entrepreneurs, that there's no guarantee, I think, is what I'm saying. And you have to operate
yeah,
without a net in a lot of cases.
absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me, in real estate, tell me about, let's talk about how you're using social media, and are your buyers, are they all local? Are they coming in from all over the place? What do you see?
So I think it depends on the platform. So I have done stuff on Instagram and Facebook prior. I just started doing some TikTok stuff, and we're already starting to grow there. It depends on the platform in that, like, Google owns YouTube. Google is the number one search algorithm on the planet. It would be kind of fun to maybe do an experiment here. I don't know. Do you have your computer in front of you? Or you're on the
Uh,
computer? Duh. Stupid,
yeah.
stupid question. So like if you went into Google right now and typed in relocating to coastal Virginia, Google has built up a profile around you. And they say, Paul looks for this. Sometimes he prioritizes locally owned businesses and he wants to see the map view. Sometimes, he clicks this and he wants to see a video. But at some point, usually Google will recommend a video. All right. And so I play the game of Google is the largest search algorithm on the planet. Google Image is number 2. YouTube is number 3, all owned by the same people.
Mm.
So if you did type it in, relocating to coastal Virginia, likely my video will pop up. And usually on the first page of Google, depending on the person, right? Again, some variability there, but I would argue 85,
Sure.
90% of the time it's going to happen. I didn't pay a dime for that.
Right.
Not a red penny. It's simply because I produce content that people watch and they click the thumbnail and they watch a certain portion. I'm curious, did it come up?
Oh, I put a note here to do it later.
That's all right. That's okay. So, but the idea here is the reason I say that is people will start on Google or sometimes YouTube and they'll start their search. Like if you're interested in buying a pellet grill, you might start on Google pellet grills, pellet grill brands, best pellet grill for 2002, best pellet grill for 2023, most expensive, least expensive, most efficient, biggest, whatever it is that you're typing in there, those are kind of Google searches. And so you can kind of do the same thing with YouTube is because they're linked. If I type in moving to coastal Virginia, relocating to coastal Virginia, and I do that in Google, or if I do that in YouTube, they're going to recommend some type of content. So I would say on YouTube, when a client comes in through YouTube, 85% of the time, it's a relocation. They're coming from Utah. Say we've had Utah, Colorado, San Francisco, LA, Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, Colorado, Germany. And so, 75, 85, 90%, depends on, the amount of leads that come from somewhere else because they're looking and trying to learn about the area before they come here.
Right.
I've had several local clients that have come from YouTube because we do things like drone tours and area information and neighborhood information, that type of thing. And so someone moving from Norfolk to Virginia Beach or going down to Chesapeake to get more space or looking at new construction, we do some of that stuff. It's trying to show up a little bit of everywhere, but at the beginning, you have to start somewhere. And so I started with the most broad, which is pros and cons of moving to Virginia Beach, cost of living of Virginia Beach, top 5 luxury neighborhoods in Virginia Beach, things like that. And so that's where they search. If you look at Instagram and TikTok, and there's a tendency that you're building an audience that is a little bit more localized, not always. The other benefit here is that your sphere of influence, the people that already know, like, and trust you, see you more often. There's a reason Coca-Cola puts their can in the Transformers movie because they know that familiarity breeds trust. The more often you see a thing, the more likely you are to consume it or use it. And so as a real estate agent or any type of business owner, you have to think about how often am I showing up? How often is your listing sign in someone's neighborhood? Is it on the grocery cart? Is it on a billboard? Is it on the radio? Right? The more often you can show up in the person's life, the more likely it is they're going to think about you when the time comes to need that product or service.
Yeah, so you're buying brain cells there, right? I mean, you're buying real estate in their brain, ready to buy. They're thinking of you. They remember you, right? So this is fascinating. The whole idea that the world, particularly the Google and the YouTube connection, because of course, as you're describing my search for the grill, it's like, yeah, that's what I do, and exactly. And I was thinking of a few other things I've just recently searched for. And the videos do pop up, the maps do pop up. And I didn't realize that they pulled the videos in from YouTube. And it does make sense that YouTube is really essentially a huge search platform, very similar to Google itself.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a book by a guy named Daryl Eves. He's probably in my opinion, he is the number one voice when it comes to YouTube and understanding YouTube. He's an advisor to like Mr. Beast and Mark Rober, and super cool guy. He has a lot of free information on his YouTube channel. And in his book, The YouTube Formula, which I highly recommend if anybody's looking at getting into the business of doing YouTube to bring clients in, it might kind of, someone may already know this, but it might kind of concern you about how in depth Google and YouTube categorize everything. Everything. The AI within YouTube, if I have a picture of Mark Twain in the background or Albert Einstein, will recognize that photo and assign some value, 0 to 100, and say, Dan Inman is somehow, at least in some proportion, affiliated to Albert Einstein. And so when someone looks up area information, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if someone looks like at area information, and if the one differentiating factor, all things else being equal, is that that individual searching for that information happens to like Albert Einstein versus Mark
Mm.
Twain in another word, it might go, you know what? I want to recommend Dan's video because every other category is equal except the Albert Einstein. And I think they might resonate with his content more.
Wow. So so it's just so deep,
Mhm.
the connection. And obviously this is again back to this whole idea of the reality of where we live versus the way we want the world to be. So they know
Mhm.
everything about us. They know everything about we search. And so they're able to pull that together, and and your content then has the ability to reach people anywhere. And they're coming in based on like characteristics, the content and the value you produce. And they watch
Mhm.
one of your videos, they watch something else about the area, then maybe another video is recommended. Pretty soon they watch two or three, and they're really getting served all of your content, maybe even on some of the other platforms, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think if you think about it like this, if the last time you were on YouTube, I don't know if you ever look at like car reviews. Again, let's just use the pellet grill. If you went and looked up Porsche 911 reviews, there's probably 80, 90 people that have written or done content on YouTube around the Porsche 911. Happens to be one of my favorite cars, my favorite sports car. YouTube is looking at how, basically three things. Did someone click on the thumbnail, and how much did they watch of the content? And then how many times did they watch that person content over? So saw Mr. Beast title or thumbnail, clicked on it, watched the entire video, and then went and watched 5 other of his videos. Right. And so the next time around, YouTube goes, you know what? You not only clicked it, you watched it all the way through and rewound it to some key spots. And then you watched 5 more of his videos. It's pretty obvious that you like this guy. The next time you log into YouTube, we're probably going to recommend something in there. Now, over time, YouTube develops some type of profile. Hey, you watch Porsche 911? Audi is also a pretty popular brand.
Mm.
Maybe we'll recommend Audi, right? And so maybe they recommend Audi 5 times, but you don't click on it. Okay, Audi's not it. Maybe BMW. Maybe we're going to recommend the same car reviewer, but a different model. This other guy did a Porsche 911 review. Let's put that in front of him. Okay, well, he didn't click on that. What about a girl, right? And so at some point, and this is just true, is in our area, there probably could be 20, 30, 40 agents that all produce content around our area, pros and cons, cost of living, things to do, blah, blah, blah. But at some point, it doesn't matter because someone's going to look at Dan Inman and go, 6'1", chubby bearded white dude. Don't like it. Not going to watch it. Right. Versus, and it's just, this is the reality of the world we live in.
Yeah.
And so someone else is going to go, previous military, bearded, kind of gruff, cusses occasionally.
That's awesome. And they know you. And that's the coolest thing. They've watched videos. They've consumed your content. So before they even pick up the phone or reach out, however they're communicating with you to introduce themselves to say, hey, Dan, I'm moving to Virginia Beach or Chesapeake. I need some help with a home. They already know you, right?
It's pretty fantastic, to be honest. And for any real estate agent or loan officer, honestly, who is looking at doing something similar, you probably have built a business at least partially around referrals. And referrals have been kind of like the gold standard for a long period of time. But even referrals in some capacity can be a little awkward, or you still have to kind of earn the business. My friend Joe recommended you, but I still want to make sure we're a good fit. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's a perfect way. My friend Paul said, Dan, if I don't use anybody else but you, then I'm a freaking idiot. So whatever you say goes, man. And so, it's like, that's like the softest lob. It's like, cool. I don't have to argue on my pricing. I don't have to argue. Like when I say, hey, you need to write this offer because there's 6 other offers. And if you want to win it, this is what it's going to take. I'm not getting like, well, what I want to do this. I want to do it. That was like, well, you just list. I've been doing this much longer than you. I do 60 deals a year. You buy one house every 10 years. Maybe, just maybe, I know a little more about the process than you do.
Right.
And sometimes that argument has to happen with clients that don't trust you. So YouTube, they've watched 10, 11, 20 videos. And at some point their brain goes, that's my guy. And I've shown up to like Zoom meetings or in person, and they're like, dude, we watched all your content. Or I go out and show a house and I'm like, I'm about to say something. And they're like, oh, you're going to say this. I'm like, it's almost like creepy a little bit.
That
Like,
is creepy,
weird.
but in a good way.
But it's fantastic because
Yeah.
they've already decided that they trust you. And you start off on a good foot. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves fame, on occasionally, I'll show up on a Zoom call and they're like, oh my God, it's Dan Inman. And I'm like, my sister and my wife and my kids in the back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's walking around the house with a big head now for the next half an hour. I'm Mr. YouTuber. Look at
Yeah, that's right.
but
you gotta love it.
but there's a certain sense of that it's like, hey, this is pretty cool that not only because YouTube is I can't reach out, right? I can't cold call. It is impossible to do.
Right.
They reach out and say, like, I can probably find in my email right now. Hey, Dan, we're moving to the area. Here's our life story. I've even had someone say, I hope you have time for us. If you do, please, give us a call if we need a chance.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. Like, I got this.
No, that's awesome. That's just an amazing way to build a business. And there's a lot of value in that, creating that authority and then that trust before they even reach out. And it, honestly, I think it makes a better transaction for everybody because even your buyers, they've already crossed this bridge of, hey, I feel like I know, like, and trust him already. And so now we can just focus on the transaction, versus sort of having the back of their mind. I don't really know this guy. He called me out of the blue or whatever. And so there's really no trust there yet. So they got to overcome that in the whole negotiation process of the house and everything that's involved in that.
Sure.
You've already,
or if something comes up, like, stuff happens. I mean, you've been working, you said, mostly in the commercial lending world.
Yeah.
Look, deals don't always go perfectly.
Yeah.
Crazy enough, the most expensive, most complex thing you'll ever buy has variables that are involved, has people that are involved, emotions that are involved. And guess what?
Imagine that.
It doesn't always perfectly go smoothly. But what happens when that something goes a little bit awry and there's trust?
Yeah.
Dan's got my best at heart. I know he does. When he says this, it's because he's looking out for it. Not, is he pulling a fast one on us? Is he just trying to push this to the end? Does he need this paycheck? Like, that's what they call it, salesman breath. It's like,
right.
So much of that is circumvented when the trust is involved. And I think content has some of the highest potential to build trust prior to you even meeting your client, better than any other medium.
Well, I certainly agree with you. I'm an avid consumer of podcasts, of videos on YouTube and whatnot. And I have my favorites and it does make a difference. You make that connection, where someone's coming from and you just feel good about it. And if you need something there and that they offer, then, it's a phone call away or an email away or whatnot. Dan, we're out of time, man. Tell everybody, this has been awesome. I'm going to dig deeper in this with you at some point. You've obviously mastered, and I know you'd say you haven't.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah. I would.
Well, I mean, compared to the average Joe, you're way out there and it's working for you. Tell everyone how they can get up with you. If there's someone that wants to work with you in any capacity.
Yeah. I mean, the best way, you can get a hold of us on almost every platform. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, we're basically everywhere. One platform that I need to do a better job is LinkedIn, but we're going to get there. So you can find us on any there. Living in coastal Virginia, Dan Inman. I'm the team lead for Inman Home Services with Real Broker. So we have a small team that's continuously growing and we'll probably double the transactions here over the next year. We service all of Hampton roads. So from as far north as Williamsburg and Gloucester out to as far west is Franklin. Most of our business is in Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach. But hey, one of the biggest things in real estate and the loan world when you're trying to learn stuff is rip off and duplicate. They call it R&D. And so go to my channels, go to my content. And the reality is you can take all of my stuff, repurpose it for you, your audience, your people, your area. No one's going to know the difference and just see what's working and then figure out the voice that works for you. I'm kind of an open book. You and I were talking, I think, before we started recording, that at the end of the day, it comes down to implementation. I'll probably share 99% of what we're doing. I might keep a little secret sauce to myself, but I'll share most of it because I know that 99% of people are not going to implement it. And I'm not worried about you being my competition because I am an implementer. We get shit done. As soon as the idea comes across, I find a way to systemize it and put somebody in charge of it and execute on it. But so I say that is like, I have such a big heart for generosity. if you want to get a hold of me and pick my brain, I'm more than willing to do that.
Awesome. Dan, this has been great, man. You've added tremendous value. I really appreciate your time today, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. It was a pleasure speaking with you.